You just said, play around with it, get to know what's going on with this technology. In our next session, you have the opportunity to do that. So I am so happy to introduce another colleague. Next session is going to be led by a few friends in town, and also Dr. Zach Steelman. He is the Associate Professor of Information Systems at the Walton College and has been researching, teaching, and developing Web3 technologies in academia and in practice over the last 5 years. Zach is actually I consider you one of the founding members of the Blockchain Center of Excellence because in 2017, before there was a Blockchain Center, I drove up from Little Rock for the very first blockchain hackathon at the university, which Zach put on, and that was kind of the initial signal from all of the students and all of the partners that we need to make something official here. So thank you for being a true founder of the programs that we have at the university. He's taught development courses in web development, blockchain, data analytics, and emerging technologies at Oklahoma State and Arkansas. So I will let you introduce our Bildr guest here today, and thank you so much.
Thank you. So I'm Dr. Zach Stillman. It's great to see everybody here. This kind of gets bigger and bigger every year. I want to introduce Mark and Drew from Bildr, and we're going to kind of have a conversation about some of the tools they've developed. We kind of kicked off the conference with token proof. What are some initial tools we can use? You've heard about a bunch of use cases. How can you get into this space? We're going to kind of share a tool with you today that you can quickly get into this space and start building something. Whether you're a developer or not, I've had students in the audience, and they've all used this tool. They're using it now. They've used it before. So we're going to kind of have a conversation about some of the other tools that you guys have developed, kind of the way that we kind of get into this space, and talk a little bit about how they kind of share the Web3 vision to their community. So I'll kind of let you introduce yourself, Mark and Drew, and then we'll kind of kick it off.
Sure thing. Thanks, Zach. I like your PFP up there, by the way.
Oh, that's the wrong one. That's the old one.
Beard, man. That's amazing. All right, I'm Mark. I'm CEO of Bildr. So we started off a really long time ago in 2006, actually wanting to build like a no-code platform before that was a thing. Tried to raise funding. Everybody said, nope, what are you talking about, kid? Basically kicked me out. So we just went and did it ourselves. We went and got a bunch of clients, built this platform, and then 2 years ago, I spun it out into a product. We rebuilt the whole thing from scratch and really launched probably more like 9 months to a year ago. We were kind of in a spot where it's a real product. And then last year, late last year, we got into Web3, thanks to Drew, and built in a whole bunch of back-end tech into the platform. So now you can visually build for Web3. So you're doing things like connecting your wallet for authentication, doing smart contract interactions, all built into the platform. You just drag and drop things on, check the boxes, do those kind of things, and you're good to go. And then most recently, we started doing art to NFTs, which is really exciting for us. And I'll probably let Drew intro some of that with his background.
Cool. So yeah, I'm Drew, and I joined Bildr right as they spun out into a product, basically. So I'm kind of like the newest member. And I missed their agency side, but I had run my own agency for 13 years before that, and then spent maybe 3 or 4 years specifically as like a no-code consultant. So I was in the no-code space. At that same time, I was like very into Web3, which we didn't really call it Web3 at that point, but very into like crypto and Bitcoin and ICOs and all that stuff. It's just kind of a hobby. So, but I'd done art my whole life. I mean, really, really heavy into art. And then when I went to college, I don't know if it's still the same, but at the time, it was like, the idea was like, you can't make money in art. So I thought I was kind of cheating the system by getting a graphic design degree where I could do art but make money, which it didn't really pan out. So I had this gap where I lost art. And then as Web3 and NFTs started getting popular, and I'm seeing it, I saw it as my opportunity to get back into art and to like bring art into my other passions, which was like, you know, development and building products and that kind of thing. And so luckily it fit right in with Bildr. And luckily the whole, you know, the wider ecosystem, everything was ramping up. It was a bull market with NFTs. And it just worked out really well that we were able to kind of transition that no-code ideology into Web3 and basically allow us to bring all these people into Web3 who didn't have to have code knowledge but could come into this new kind of like democratizing technology and take advantage of it.
And I would add to that, that was sort of like the core principle that guided us behind creating Bildr in the first place was this idea of just democratizing technology access, and we kind of view it as most people have a logical mind that can build pretty much anything if they can think through it. Almost everyone I've ever met is capable of doing that, but code for some reason scares people. It's like the syntax, I think, freaks people out a little bit because you're literally learning a new language. So we try to do this gap, this thing where we like close that gap between, and those core concepts really translated well into Web3. Just in general, the idea of you're kind of like self-sovereign, you are responsible for yourself, and you can go build whatever you want. It's all on you, and then the community engagement built around that to help each other. So like in Bildr, anything you create is pretty easily shareable between each other. You never kind of have to rebuild the same thing again. We really wanted to create that utopian dream of like never recreate the same thing again. Never really get there, but we're like continue to push in that direction. So we saw just a ton of alignment. And it was really exciting watching last year whenever like we went in and built the authentication pieces, and we were shocked at how easy it was. It was like, wait, we can just kind of like do a Web 2.5 thing where we create an actual Web 2 session, but we don't have any clue who this person is. There's nothing but a wallet ID included with them, and they can basically take that wherever they want to go within our systems. So like you can use the same wallet across all of these different tools that we built, and we don't care about tracking you. We're not trying to tie you down. Like that, those core principles are like really valuable to us. So just merged really, really well.
One of the interesting things that I found with Bildr is you guys were traditionally a Web 2 company, have lots of experience in regular Web 2 development. And one of the problems that I saw in a lot of projects coming out in the Web 3 space is people are jumping straight in with no background whatsoever, and they're using some of these tools that are out there in other spaces, SDKs, or if anybody's used Web3.js or any of these things that are out there, they were really kind of throwing all of the traditional knowledge we had from Web 2 out the window. Right, all security concerns and everything kind of out the window. And it's been interesting to see that from Bildr's perspective, you're kind of building all of that in from the get-go of here's how we traditionally did this, here's how we can add that on top. So what are some of the features you've kind of added in that route to kind of help transition from that Web 2 to 2.5 to Web 3.0?
Yeah, I mean, I think true Web 3, in terms of like web applications, we're pretty far off from that, like the industry is, and mainly because of database structure and actually handling the types of apps that people can, traditionally think of as an app. But in the Web 2.5 side of things, where like a good example would be token gating, right? So we made a real effort to, we make a real effort to say that's not real token gating because it's really easily hackable on the front end, Like a lot of people go out and do that where they just, effectively you're reading the wallet address and then granting access to something, and then like in CSS display none or in CSS show the thing, and it's just so easily hackable. But that's sort of what's being pervasive in the marketplace right now is like token gating, and we see that as a problem. We think you should actually do these things properly from the beginning. We think you should educate your user base on how to do that properly, and so we take it seriously. You can do the non-real token gating, as we kind of put it, but with Bildr. But we really encourage you to like go in, create an actual authentication mechanism within Bildr. It's all built in with actions. You don't have to like know how to code or anything. And then you just actually token gate content, token gate other sites or whatever you want to do. So that'd probably be a good example of like really holding to those principles and doing it the right way. And that's something that we just kind of do naturally. We always dive a little further than you have to get it all the way to the end. Is that a good example? I mean, there's probably a ton.
Yeah, that's a great example. And some of the things that I think from your journey as you kind of went over this last year, and I was lucky in that I found Bildr through crypto Twitter, just seeing things online. And for those of you that are not in the space in Web3, if you're not on Twitter, you need to be on Twitter to see this. You probably have a LinkedIn. That's 6-month-old news, right? So you need to be on the Twitter if you want to hear it currently as it's going on. And I had seen Mark just speaking in a Twitter Spaces and kind of jumped in and kind of saw the product as it was going through, looking at some of the education. And you had been working with a couple other projects that were out there to kind of, as you were getting this off the ground. So can you maybe talk about some of the initial projects that were kind of those mint sites that you created or some of the different token-gated things as you were building out the tool that you eventually put into the Bildr Studio?
Yeah, so we always are like we're big on dog fooding or like doing, using it ourselves. It's like Bildr is built with Bildr from the ground up. Like when we make modifications to the platform, we actually use the visual development environment to edit the visual development environment, to publish it. Like we use our own tools all the time. So the first thing we actually did in production was actually a project that Drew did with us. I can't remember was Dead's before? Dead's was before the studio passes, right? Yeah, so he had an NFT project. I'll let you talk about Dead's. And then we also created what we call a studio pass, which is lifetime access to our tools as an NFT pass. So we're always experimenting with, how do we create a SaaS model using NFTs and tokens in a traditional SaaS sense? Because there's all kinds of barriers there that kind of break traditional SaaS models, but we're trying to figure those things out. So yeah, I'll probably let Drew talk about Dead's because that was a really interesting project. I think it was the first no-code generated art NFT project that existed, I would say.
I say that. I don't know if it was. But yeah, I think it actually speaks also to how we have this Web 2 background, because we had this huge platform that did everything Web 2. And I saw like Bored Ape Yacht Club, for example, they're generating this artwork that someone drew the traits and then the actual NFTs are created programmatically. And so my personal challenge, I was like, I wonder if I can do that. I didn't even know how they did that at first. I'm like, I want to figure out how they did that, and I want to see if I can do it in Bildr, because that's like the fun thing. And at Bildr, we're always doing these side projects just for fun, basically. So I did a little research. It turned out to be very simple how they construct those. It's just layers of traits with clear backgrounds, and you pick random ones, put them on top of each other, and flatten them down. And so I created something in Bildr where I could upload all the trait layers and generate them randomly. And then in the same way, so Bildr's like really open-ended, and it's like you can do all this. You can pull in any JavaScript library, for example. So in this context, all I needed to do in order to mint was like pull in a library, and I can use it in Bildr to mint. Bildr itself didn't have to have any additional upgrades or tooling for me to be able to do that. So like everything was there, and basically what I did was I took some time to sort of figure out what it meant to make an NFT project, just like everyone else was doing with code at the same time. And ultimately, I did, the Dead's project has like 2 phases. And so the first phase, I generated the artwork with Bildr, but uploaded all of the actual NFTs directly into OpenSea and kind of like let OpenSea do the smart contract side, which is a totally different programming language than web stuff that Bildr does. So at the time, I thought I can't do that in Bildr, but as soon as I launched it, I thought, let's do phase 2. Let's see if I can do the smart contract in Bildr as well. And ultimately, I had to do a bunch of custom coded smart contracts first to like learn it and to learn everything, how to deploy, all that stuff. But ultimately, we were able to create a smart contract builder inside of Bildr that would generate the types of smart contracts that you need for NFTs. And we were able to sort of like infuse Bildr's ideology into that. So you're able to generate the smart contract, but it's like interoperable back and forth with code. You can take it out and add code to it, or you can deploy it as is, et cetera. And so ultimately, one of the things, this art to NFTs idea is it's a suite of products and a course basically that we came up with to allow you to mint an NFT project using only the no-code tools, only Bildr and some of the tools we made with Bildr.
And to kind of extend on that extensibility side of Bildr, our goal with Bildr was to be a language that's visual, not to be a platform, right? So technically we have to be a platform for now, like we host everything. There's no reason technically we can't allow you to export things. It's all just normal code, and we did do that over the years many times for big customers when we were using it as an internal tool. But from the ground up, we kind of see it as like these atomic pieces that are executed using this, basically a core. And by always treating things like that, we kind of treat like every element type, what we call an element type or an action type, we treat them all as plugins. So a good example of that would be like, you have an action that, I don't know, sets a variable or something. if you're a JavaScript developer and you just want to go look at how the code is written and modify it, you can just do that in Builder. You can just go modify the JavaScript or whatever you want to do. You can jump back and forth from like GUI to CSS, just move back and forth, edit the CSS. The GUI updates automatically. So we bring all of that exact same methodology when we do this. So in the contract generator, it's super awesome. You're like toggling things and just like setting max ment and all that kind of stuff. And it's just generating the code on the side. And the goal there is we give you the process. You don't have to know how to code. You don't have to know how to do anything. And you can just go deploy that to mainnet. We show you how to deploy it to testnet first, and we just show you how to deploy it to mainnet. We want to teach these things to people who, even though you're not coders, if you're not a coder, we want you to know why is this? Why is it important to have a testnet? Why is it important to go through that process? Because once it's up. Like you're done, you know? There's no coming back from it. There's no modifying that code. So we take you through all those processes, but also if you get there and you go, you know what? I would like a coder to take it from here. We just expose it all to you. We sort of don't, we're different than a traditional, like, what people call no-code, where they're trying to lock you into a walled garden. We actually go the complete opposite direction. We're trying to say, we want to optimize your processes and teach you how to get into it, but we don't want to control the output or control the outcomes. And in the art to NFT side of that, like Drew mentioned, you can go into OpenSea and do these things. You can upload it, but you're locked into their side. You go to Manifold or ThirdWeb or any of these other tools, you're basically in a walled garden at that point. If you want to interact with things, if you want to do more, you now have to integrate with their SDKs, with their APIs, and we really just don't see that as the right future for Web3. We think whatever you're creating is yours, and we shouldn't have a walled garden around that. So that just philosophically, we really want to hold dear to that, and we think it's really important from an industry perspective that everyone at least gives an attempt, like a valiant effort to do that. There are business constraints where you kind of have to do certain things, but we should all be striving for that of like, you know, there's a balance there where you're trying to allow people to level up while making it easy enough for them to do that to where they're not defaulting to something where they're in the walled garden. It's a really hard needle to thread, but that's the goal at least. We're trying to do that.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned kind of the extensibility, and I think that was what really kind of drew me in when I was kind of playing with this, because I ran into the same issue of I need to get Web3, I need to get these SDKs into these different tools, and unless someone had built a plugin, you couldn't do that. And I know that a lot of platforms and a lot of Mint sites were using Bubble as their initial because they were one of the first with a plugin ready to go. But anytime you need something additional added or there's an update to the SDK, you've got to wait for the developer to update that plugin. I didn't have time for that, and I needed to get things to work. And Bildr was the first one that allowed me to drop in the full JavaScript package, see the code as well as all of the kind of no-code options as well, and it kind of got my brain kind of going. And then over the summer, as we played around, to see the community that's grown with Bildr, I think, is one of the key elements of this process, especially from the Web3 side that I've seen, is you guys have the Discord, which you're pushing as well. You also do a lot of things on Twitter, being just active yourself, sharing you're at conferences, as well as Twitter Spaces. How do you think that's helped and kind of grow out not only the user base that you have, but your own projects that you're kind of working on? Because we always like to hear about those in the Discord as you're building them, and you typically are sharing them live as you're building and showing both the good things and the bad things so that we can learn from that.
Yeah, I mean, the community side of it is so big. I know it's kind of a trope in Web3 that, you know, it's all about community, but it really is, when you have an open system like Bildr, it's really important. And it's shocking to me how much time people will put in to helping each other. It's really kind of mind-blowing to me. I'm like, you spent all night helping that person, you know, it's amazing. But it was very intentional. When we set up the Discord, we knew it was going to be a big time-consuming thing on our part, but we wanted to set a certain tone. So like whenever a user asks a question in our Discord, you'll see like Drew or myself or one of our other teammates, Dorian, go in there and we will literally like write a book on how to do the whole thing and then record a video and show exactly how it's done. And that set a tone for the community where now people are doing that as well. Other users just come in and they'll record whole Loom videos on how to do the thing that a user asked. And we're about to turn that into an educational system where the community itself can create that education, pull it in, and then have it all tagged and indexed properly. So that way, the community itself is the one pushing forward. And you kind of alluded to it, but Bildr not only is extensible in terms of like the thing that you're outputting, but also the tool itself. Everything is exposed on the front end layer completely. So we have a couple of users, Zach being one of them, who goes in and actually manipulates the front end of the studio and then shares that. It's a plugin system that's like unendorsed, right? Like we didn't have to create a plugin system. The users just started doing that. And it's been amazing watching that community just do it on its own. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's been kind of the experimentation, I think, of kind of playing with that, of what can we do, and at this point, it's kind of what can't we do with the tool, is kind of as we kind of click over. But a lot of these come from the projects that you guys are sharing. Everything you're building for yourselves or your clients, you're kind of building those tools and instantly putting them back in the studio. So the faster that you're helping clients or other people are launching things, it seems those tools are coming faster and faster into the studio as well. Are there ways that you plan to accelerate that? Are there other ways that you think that we could contribute back to that even faster?
Yeah, for sure. So a good example of that is we partnered with Rug Radio, with Farouk in the space, if you all know Farouk, helping them build out their decentralized media platform. So that whole thing is being built on Bildr. And like just a few weeks ago, they wanted to build in a full media player, like an audio player, so that anyone who's got a Rug Radio show can upload their audio, and then there's like a full player experience, like if you're on Spotify or something. And so we had the audio element in Bildr already, but we didn't really have it all fleshed out with all the actions and all the things around that. So we just went and did that. Like I had one of my coders on the team go make a bunch of actions for that, and then we went and implemented it for Rug, showed them how to do it, and then now that's going to become just part of the tool set. So we've been doing it that way for years and years, and the way we're going to extend that to the community is actually building that into a marketplace. You can already share these things between projects relatively easily, like copy-paste it, but we need to formalize that process. And then we have an entire tokenomics scheme that is unlaunched. We'll launch it after we have enough people in that marketplace doing it, but our goal is to incentivize people educating each other and helping each other and sharing things like element types and patterns and things like that. So that would be the goal, is to incentivize the creation of those things through a marketplace with tokenomics.
You know, the education point seems to really be a big piece of that, and I know I've watched probably hours and hours of Drew kind of showing me different things in these on just Loom videos that aren't even my projects, right? It's just kind of figuring out what's that mindset for some of those things. But you guys have a lot of education components in different areas. Some of them are specific to Bildr, some of them are more of your own interest around Web3. So you do a Twitter Spaces weekly. What was the vision for that? What was the purpose for that, and how that is connecting to you and the community?
It's kind of funny because that was just like, so Mark and I would meet on something for Bildr and then end up just chatting about whatever's cool and new in Web3 and coming to like some really awesome conclusions.
Or controversial. That was a lot of it too. Whatever's controversial that day in Web3.
Sometimes, yeah, we would talk about something that we thought, but we wouldn't necessarily just go tweet because it might be controversial. And then we're like, you know what, we need to actually share the controversial things, share everything. So we started this space and just kind of, we come up with a topic so that there's a point, but we often go off topic and we just do what we were doing in private, but in public, which is that same ethos for everything else, where it's like the same way we build side projects, and instead of just building them for fun on the side, we build them in public, share them in the Discord, share them on Twitter, and then build them into Bildr. It's like that whole same ethos of just kind of like, I wouldn't even call it educating. It is educating, I guess, but it's really just opening up conversation and just engaging with a community rather than, you know, more of like a Web2 mindset, which is like build the product, keep it secret, have a big launch. You know, we're more like, let's do everything in public, our knowledge, our platform, you know, everything.
We love the two-way conversations, which is kind of funny to say sitting on a stage, talking one way. But we were just discussing it over lunch. I was like, can we do this in a two-way manner where we're just having a conversation about it? Because it is a lot of fun on the spaces. We'll have like someone random who just found Bildr 2 days before show up in the spaces and like ask to be a speaker. We have no idea what they're going to say. They come up there and they just like talk about their project they're wanting to do and ask all these questions about how to do it. And the topic that we were supposed to be talking about was like, you know, decentralization in media or something. And it's just like completely veers off to the side. But that's the fun of it to us. We really like that mode of thinking, because the way that we innovate at Bildr is through that. what are the actual needs in the world, not what am I thinking of back here on the whiteboard, and then I'm going to bring that out to the world. I mean, it does eventually do that, right? We kind of get the consensus from the group, and then from that, we're building out new features and building out new things. And eventually, we really want it to just be truly decentralized in terms of how Builder actually innovates. There's really no reason with a system like this that the community itself couldn't be the ones to say, I need a new thing, and Builder doesn't have to create that new thing. You could go create that new thing, put it out into the world, and then it just exists. And if we do it in the right way, which we have a plan for distributed hosting first, and then eventually fully decentralized, it's going to take years to see that through. To using a system like Builder, or building a system like Builder in that way is pretty technically difficult to do, and it's going to take time. But eventually, we see a world where not only is the thing you produce not able to be taken down, but also the tools you use to create it cannot be taken from you. Like, that's the long-term goal. That's the long-term vision with Web3 and decentralization at Builder. That's what our goal is. And so we just try to exhibit that same like two-way community solution like all day in everything we do. And it's fun. Like, it's a lot more fun than just kind of, just chatting in Discord. Hey, we got a new feature out. We're actually in there like, what do you need? Let's talk about it, and let's go do it right now. Let's just go build it. So, a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's interesting to kind of see the growth of the projects that you guys may just quickly tweet about online, and 2 weeks later, Drew's got another project that's out and released, like proof of wallet that you're working on that's just was your own little project. Can we make this work? Is this a protocol for some of these things? And as a developer, it's good to just see what are people building, how are they building, even if it's not full products. I want to see what the struggles are as people are going through this, and the community in Builder really shares everything, good and the bad. Hey, if there's a problem, here's what I can do. But one of the things that really drew me to Builder was the Studio Pass. It was one of the first softwares that I found that legitimately had an NFT as the license with that lifetime pass and had a product behind it. Because there were a lot of NFTs that dropped all during last year saying, hey, we're going to build a product if you fund us and buy this NFT. And you guys went at it from the other direction saying, we already had something, we're going to go with this NFT. Can you maybe kind of lead me through the thought process of how you got to that, and maybe how you got to the numbers and pricing and how that aligned with your existing SaaS product?
Yeah, I mean, it was all experimental. Like, to be honest, it was just, well, we can, so let's try it. Let's give it a shot. And Drew did something awesome there too. The Studio Pass, you like click a button to update the look and feel of it. So it's not a PFP, but it's also not just like a static thing. It was really cool to see people would go and they'd click the button and it would just like randomly draw it. And all of the drawing in there is using Builder's actions to modify CSS. It's just kind of crazy what it's doing, like how that actually operates. But it was super cool to see people take that pass and share it on Twitter and say, I just minted this, compared to, like, no one does that with a Stripe receipt, right? Like, they have their credit card receipt and they're like, hey, I signed up for this service. Nobody does that. So it was really cool to see that. But you do have to, we went into it consciously aware that you can't have this unlimited. It's lifetime access, right? So we had to limit what that is. And then how do you actually make money with this as a SaaS long term? You're not going to do it off of royalties. It's just not going to get there. So we're lucky enough with Builder, we have a two-sided model, right? We have the model of access to the studio, but then we also have the model of hosting, right? So and upgrades as well. So the Studio Pass basically gets you pro-level access to all the tooling, but there's still fees. Like if you go above a certain cap, if we're hosting it for you and you have a ton of usage, you still have to pay extra. So we have a model that can actually work for that. But really, it's that experimentation. We love to try to figure out, because everyone's trying to figure out that kind of a thing. How do you translate these business models from Web 2 to Web 3? How do you actually do it? And I think you have to have something like Builder. You have to have something that can actually create a scenario where you have an upfront that covers enough cost basis to cover you. Like when you buy a pass, when you bought a pass when we first started minting them, it was $500 to buy a pass. Now it's $200 to buy a pass or whatever it is. There's also that side of the business model you got to be careful with. But luckily, we weren't looking at it as this is the end-all, be-all business model for Builder. We were looking at it as an experiment for how can we how can we do this? And if it's successful and if it works, how can we teach other people within the community to do the same thing? And I'd love to hear Drew's thoughts on this too, because Drew did most of that implementation.
I mean, for us, like, it was really an experiment, just like everything else. So we thought, we saw other people using NFTs for potential SaaS or like potential businesses, kind of what you're alluding to, like not really there yet. And we were like, oh, well, what would that look like for real? Like, let's make it. And that's part of why I joined Bildr in the first place, is this ethos of like, yeah, let's just try it, let's just make it. And so at the same time, we're trying to figure out how to do NFTs for SaaS. And then I have a personal passion with the art side, and I'm like, can I do generative art in a low-code, no-code tool? Which I could, like that. The passes are like fully generative art that there's no code involved. It was all just Bildr actions. So it was like really fun on that personal level. So even if we weren't trying to figure it out for like a business case for Bildr, I would have done the same thing. And we would have had that same knowledge that we could share with the community or add into the studio, or whatever. And I think we did kind of figure out, or at least take that first step towards figuring out what NFTs for SaaS could look like and like how that could be successful. And we're still in the process of seeing it through and implementing it. But ideally, other people can look to us and say, oh, that's how that's done, and they can apply it to their own business, which would be amazing.
I just thought about two other things too. One is permissionless partnerships, which we did a space on this a couple of weeks ago of, when you have an NFT as access pass, there's no reason you can't just have other tokens granting certain amounts of access within the same product. And it's pretty easy to just layer that on. And we did this with a couple of products that we put out over the last year, where we would partner with NFT collections and grant the holders of those NFTs access to our tools for a period of time. And it was really cool because they could go, this was sort of like towards the end of the bull market, where everyone was trying to figure out, how do we actually provide some value? We're launching this NFT and people aren't just buying them anymore. How do we provide value? And we were able to come in and say, you can give real utility from day one, right? So we would have them like buy, we had a pass that we don't actually sell it anymore. It's up and it's available, and we will partner if people want to, but it's called the Collection Pass. So the Collection Pass, we would basically work with an NFT collection, get their users access, their holders access to our tools for a period of time if they held that pass. And they were able to go and say, from day one when you mint, you have real value coming out of this thing you minted. And it's not something they've built yet. They haven't gotten their product out yet, but it's a way for them to provide real value immediately, which we thought was pretty cool. It came at the wrong time in the market when we were trying to do that. But I think that idea of permissionless partnerships is just super cool, because we can really easily partner with all kinds of different communities and groups and layer it into our authentication super easily inside the tooling. So that was something that I don't know if we actually foresaw that coming. I don't think we actually.
Yeah, I think it came out, yeah, and then we were like, this is something everyone needs to do. And other people do it. It's like there, but we kind of created a way, formalized it, and shared it again with the community, so we can like actually get it out there and get other people trying it.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so I want to leave some time for questions, because I know we've got a lot of students and other developers and builders in the room. Some have tried Bildr, some haven't. Before we kind of open it up for some questions, where are the best locations to get the information? Where do we find the studio, the tools, and get access to both of you for some of these things when we go try this tool?
Yeah, 100% our Discord is where to get information, but bildr.com, just go there, sign up. Links to our Discord and everything are there. And there's /education, has a ton of education in it. But really what we find is, just like with traditional code, everybody gets stuck at some point, depending on who you are, what your background is. And because there's no Stack Overflow for Bildr, our Discord is basically that. Come in there and ask the question, and hopefully we can get you a quick answer, or someone in the community can help and answer quickly. Most of the basic questions have been answered a dozen times, and there's a bunch of users who can just like answer those questions, because just like with traditional development, you're gonna get a roadblock somewhere in your process. We have no idea what you're building, totally open framework, so Discord is the spot for that for sure. And we're super active in there. We're in there every day and just hanging out and talking, and come join the Twitter spaces too. We had somebody a couple weeks ago literally just tell us their whole project, and the whole question was just, can I do this with Bildr? And it was like 10 minutes of just telling us about their project. It was fun. It was just fun listening to them. So that's the place to go.
Okay, excellent. Okay, before I open it up, we may have a few questions. I'm sure we will. Why don't you tell me, from each of you, what is the most exciting thing that you're waiting to see in the Web3 space, in the development side, for that next interesting piece? What's your next kind of itch that you have to scratch that you're seeing coming down the pipeline?
It's a tough question. I mean, I think I always have something different, probably. Like, I'm always going on to the new thing. But right now, on a personal level, I'm just really focused on, like, wallet security. Sort of like, if you think about onboarding the next cohort of people into Web3, there's obviously tons of problems with security and wallets and people getting their stuff stolen and getting scammed. And so lately, I've just been focusing on that. But I would almost say it's random. It's just where my focus is right now. And I'll build out some stuff. I'm building out a whole product around that. And we're going to build whatever comes out of that, we'll build into Bildr. And then, whatever else is out there that's interesting to me, we'll pick that right up next and keep going.
I think I'd probably go with actual decentralized hosting of a web app, which I think we're just a long ways off from it technically. Just all the different pieces required there. But we have a plan for doing a short-term view on that and then a longer-term view. The shorter-term view is basically like, here's statically hosted sites, just hosted on IPFS or Arweave, but also when you publish, you also have the traditional Web 2 site that draws from the exact same static assets, which again is that Web 2.5 thing. I think there needs to be more focus on that reality of Web 2.5 needs to be here for a long time, because you're not going to get consumers to get the right browser in place to do the way that we all want it to be done. So reality is we got to do the extra work and have both available, drawing from the same static assets. So that excites me a lot. Like I think we'll get there pretty fast. But long term, it'd be really nice to see actual database with authentication done the right way, which is really hard to do. I don't even know what technically the right way to do that is. We've had some of these conversations on Spaces too, but that'd be my long term, yeah.
Okay, excellent. So I want to open it up for some questions. Do we have any in the room? Here we go.
Thank you. Yeah, you mentioned a couple times about long-term goals. I'm kind of curious, what do you see as the biggest barrier to reaching whatever the long-term goals is, whether it's scaling or if it's, from a business standpoint, is it get to a point of acquisition, or what is the biggest barrier to scaling?
Yeah, so just maybe I can define that long-term goal a little bit. So my goal would be to have tools like Bildr truly decentralized, where they cannot be taken away from the consumer that's wanting to use those tools, and to do it in such a way that tokenomics are the thing that's incentivizing the use and the growth of those tools. And so probably the biggest hurdle is just doing it. It's so many steps to get from here to there. It's just going to take years to actually see that through. On the technical side of things, there are real technical barriers on the data side of things. On the cost side and on the speed side, there's real barriers there, but I've never seen those as actual barriers. I think you can always be a little ahead of that curve. You can pretty much assume hardware and software layers that are underneath you are going to get faster and better. You pretty much just can't assume that at this point. It's sort of like we used to do, we wrote our own version. Basically, it was Ajax, if you've been around long enough, before Ajax was a thing. We were trying to do this real-time back and forth before any of this existed. And I remember at the time, I was talking to friends of mine who are developers, and they're like, there's no way the browser is going to handle that. The hardware devices that don't have access to the right hardware to actually do those things in scripts on the front end. And our view was always just like, well, they will. Eventually they will. So we can be a little ahead of that curve and eventually get there. So from a technical standpoint, I'm not super concerned about it. Like, it will get solved, but it's really more of just like logistically getting all the moving parts done is huge. I mean, just defining tokenomics is massive in a system like that. To do it in a way that's that can actually be persistent and work for a long period of time at scale is super difficult. We spent, I don't know how many hours Drew and I spent like thinking through how do we build out this tokenomic structure, and we defined it pretty well. It's actually, there's on our site, you can go look at how we think through our tokenomics and how we think that should be structured for the community and how it should work. But it's just a bear. Like all of it is just massive to implement. So
I would add to that too. It's not exactly a barrier, but we have a whole other side of our product, which is like what we'd call the Web2 side. And we're a growing company, and we're not VC funded right now. So it's like we could put all of our effort and our entire team into that decentralization piece and probably build it out much faster. But it's kind of like going along with everything else, which is equally important too, because you can make this huge, awesome decentralized system, but if the actual tool you're using isn't going to work for what you're building, what's the point? So there's just like a ton of moving parts, basically.
thanks for the question.
Any other questions?
First, a thank you. So you mentioned your mission is fantastic. So Dr. Steelman, teaches our technical blockchain courses, and the first thing that happened to him is the tool he was using, Composer, went away. I thought Zach might go away after that tool went away, and I know he's been very happy. And thank you for all the help you've given our students at the University of Arkansas. I just, it's amazing that you talk about this experimentation. It's open, public, transparent innovation. Do you two ever look at each other and go, "Ooh, maybe we shouldn't have done that in public"? Did you have any gotcha moments, or what has been some of the humorous stories in hindsight now of doing this innovation in front of everybody?
Yeah, I think we were both versed enough with clients, because coming from agency, where we're selling to clients and we're constantly having to basically talk about the thing that's not there yet in order to sell the thing to the client and then build it, and you're always just like doing that. So it's a lot of sales experience doing that. On Discord and building in public isn't a big deal, but the Twitter Spaces do absolutely present this like opportunity for just saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. 100%. It's always in the back of my mind, like, okay, I got to be real careful about how I approach this. And some of those have been like on the environmental side of things. Like we've had some conversation around environmental on L1s and like what that's doing. And there was this one moment where I was like, I don't think it matters or something like that. And I didn't mean like it doesn't matter at all with what happens with the environment. I meant more like, same as what I was saying a moment ago. Like it's gonna get solved. I'm just confident that it's gonna get solved, so I'm not worried about it. But those are the kind of things that happen all the time where we'll say something. I would say you're a little more cautious than I am or better at it than I am. But I'll just say it, and then Drew or Cora on our team, who also moderates a lot of this stuff with us, she's so good. We've been working together for 15 years or something now, 10 to 15 years. And she knows exactly how to be like, wait, Mark, you need to restate that. You can't leave it like that. Let's go back on that. So yeah, it's good to have a good team. That's a big part of it.
Yeah, I think I don't really have any. I couldn't think of a single thing that like I've regretted building in public. But I think kind of what he was saying, like when I came into Bildr, I would think twice before saying something. Or if I were helping someone and they pointed out a bug, I'd be like, oh, should I admit this? Should I not? And the whole team, they've been together so long and they've been doing things in a way that's not like anywhere else I've ever worked at or worked with. And they're totally open and transparent, like literally to the core. So I quickly learned that I can just say whatever I want, and I can say like, oh, that's a bug, sorry, like that's on us. And no one's gonna get mad, no one's gonna say, oh, you're making Bildr look bad. And then by doing that, I quickly got feedback from people who said, we love how you're so open. We love how you admit there's bugs. And so it was like that feedback loop, and I basically haven't looked back. It's like a great way to work, and I don't think I regret anything. Even if I said something totally wrong, I would just go tell everybody, like, sorry, like that was totally wrong. That's on me. Like, no big deal. And we'd move on. And it's pretty cool.
I think that's also super important for bringing new people into development. That you're going to make mistakes. You're going to break things. It's going to fail. It's human-built systems. It's just what it is, right? So if you sort of like put this thing out there of don't show those cards, don't show the negative pieces, the negative aspects, I think it's one of those same barriers. It's like syntax of languages and coding. It's a barrier for people who are timid or scared to get into it. And our whole goal is to like remove that barrier. So a big part of it is like, just say it. Like what's the big deal about making the mistake? Just correct it. You can always, most people can go back on what they did or what they said. Like no one I've ever met is going around like actually harming people. It's okay to make mistakes, even if it produces some harm. Go correct that mistake, stand up to it and do it. So that's sort of like the baseline that we draw from. And so it does create a world where we say things or we do things and we go back on it, we change things. Now also, that was something else that Drew brings up a good bit when we're having conversations of, we throw a lot away. Like we just build stuff and then we just completely throw it out the window. And Bildr helps us do that because it's so much faster than traditional development. We can just like build, throw it out, build, throw it out, build, throw it out. And so no one on the team is like worried about that thing they spent 4 months building. Like we do this all the time. And we're like, you know what? We're just not even gonna launch that. Just not going out at all. And then we'll reiterate it, we'll do it again 6 months later, and version 2 or 3 comes out and it works great. So that kind of core thing in the whole team, everyone knows how to do it, and so we're not really worried about it. We just never really are. But, yeah. Thank you.
Any more questions?
High school video production teacher and art to NFTs. I'm trying to wrap around video content to NFTs. Is there is Discord, like go there and connect with people there? Is there somewhere I can go or my students can go to get somewhere with that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely come into the Discord, send them in and asking questions. You know, with NFTs in particular, because it's really just pointers to the content, right? So it's really not a huge deal. And we have done some things where, because of the marketplaces are good enough at, they can basically just display an NFT as a web page. And so we experimented with this a little bit where we created a Bildr page as the NFT itself. So like the pointer was just to a Bildr site, which means that you can build anything you want as the NFT at that point, right? And you can modify it and update it because it's all just pointers going back to this like production site that you're publishing to. So from a video standpoint, like there's all kinds of fun stuff you could do. Doing it on chain is something totally different, but with the more we're like coming down that path, the less people seem to actually care about that. They care about that the pointer, that they own the pointer is enough for most people. So yeah, definitely come into the Discord, and I'm sure Drew has some.
Well, yeah, I would just add to that so we have Art to NFTs, which is a course that teaches you how to mint like a visual image NFT. But also, like we were talking about, it exposes the code and you can modify the code and you can do more and expand on it. So I've used that system to do a video. Like I have a collection that the NFTs are all videos and it's like up on mainnet. And the way that I did it was pretty simple. You know, like it wasn't crazy, but if you don't know how to code and you don't know how it works, it would obviously be hard. So if someone comes in our Discord and they're like, I want to do video NFTs, I'm like, yeah, I did it, and I just help them through it. I'll sit with them, meet with them, whatever we need to do, and just get it done. And usually, also, like we were talking about, is like out of that, we'll maybe have a pattern that everyone can use, or we'll just build that into the tool we have to generate metadata, where now you can add videos. And so that's kind of how our products evolve. So if you have people that want to do it today, they come into the Discord, ask the question, I'll see it, and we'll do it. Yeah.
At True Drew.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. I just want to say, for the people that are interested in building, over the past 2 days, hopefully you've kind of seen there's kind of a recurring theme of experimentation, try stuff, get into the communities, talk, share, build it in public. I think that's what's been exciting for me in the last year. For the last 10 years, I haven't really built in public as often. I kept everything kind of private and kind of decided, I'm going to try to sell some of that. And over the last year, dove headfirst into the Web3 stuff again with new social media accounts not tied to university stuff, who I was, and just went from as if I was a novice and kind of jumped in that space and built publicly with everything. And I feel like that's what's given me the most connections and access to other places, just sharing what I'm doing and kind of accessing that. I know you guys both do that, both in the Discord when you're building as well as on Twitter. Do you have any recommendations for the students here or people wanting to get into this space, what your recommendation would be to kind of get started day one and kind of dive down this path?
I mean, Bildr. Oh. No, I'm just, but yeah, just do exactly what you said. Like, there is some really cool stuff about being able to be anonymous and everyone sort of accepting that, you know? Like, you just go make a Twitter account. It doesn't have to be you. For some people, that's really freeing. Last year, whenever I got into NFTs, I had been a little bit into crypto, but not really. I made a conscious decision to not be anonymous. For business reasons, it made sense to me, but I also kind of looked at it like, for my goals personally, I don't think anonymity is actually the right move. I'd prefer to be out there. And so I'm like Mark Zero, but it's my name, and you know, just is what it is. And so yeah, I think you can use it to your advantage though. If you're not sure yet, and you may just want to, it gives you this freedom to like, I can just jump from this anytime I want. It's no big deal, no harm, no foul. Like, go use that to your advantage. And dive into the communities, ask questions, and specifically the building communities. Like the NFT communities, I mean, you know, they're really more about pumping the price of an NFT. But if you get into the building communities, like Bildr's Discord community, those kind of communities, almost every one of those I've ever seen. It's so super helpful. It's crazy how helpful everyone is. So yeah, I would just say dive in, do it around a project idea if you have one. Like, if you've got an idea, go specifically try to finish that thing out. Like, go build a thing that you already have in your head. Helps getting started a lot.
Yeah, I'd say the same kind of thing. I think if you come into a Web3 related, especially Discord, it's surprising how open everyone is. And you can just ask a question and you'll get solid answers. And it's part of it is that everyone's learning Web3 right now. It's kind of a whole thing where everyone's doing it together. But also it's just that community ethos. So if you want to dive in and you're not sure where to start, you can just watch a Discord. If you have a project in mind, you can just say, this is what I want to build. How do I build it? And literally, you'll get help, which is, I think, counterintuitive. Like, I don't think it was like that anywhere even a few years ago, but that's really what it is. And so we see that every day. People join our Discord. You see them join in the general channel, and then 2 minutes later, they say, this is what I'm trying to do. This is my idea. It looks like maybe Bildr can do this. Can it do this? And then we're like, yeah. And then they're like, okay, how? And then we're like, we'll start here, here, here. And usually, it's attainable enough, or some form of it's attainable enough that you can start somewhere. And then, if you don't know code, it's like, it sometimes surprises people, but code is just all trial and error. It's just like trying stuff, failing, trying it again, trying it a new way, getting a little creative, hitting roadblocks, figuring them out. That's all it is. And so that's what Bildr is too. And it lends itself very well to just like jumping in a Discord and saying, this is my roadblock today. Somebody helps you get past it. And the next day you say, okay, this is my roadblock today. Somebody helps you get past it.
It kind of reminds me, it's not really trying to do anything by yourself in this space. Everybody, like when people jump in and like say, hey, I've got this idea for this Mint site or this app, and I see those all day in the Discord, the community all jumps in, so, oh, you can try this, or you can use this piece, or you can do this thing, or hey, let me help with this CSS, or hey, I have this already made for this thing, because we just want to see it built, right? We want to see it go through that process and the iteration to learn from other people building those things that we're kind of getting experience with. And I see a lot of people jump in that have no coding background, or maybe they're a UI designer, or they're great at the back-end stuff. Most of my projects are not self-developed. It's, you know, I do what I can, and then reach out for help and say, hey, can somebody jump on? Can we do this? And then kind of give back to those things. And I think that's what's helped accelerate in that learning process of, is this tool going to work? Is that tool going to work? Is having access to just ask the question instead of hitting a roadblock and just stopping and going somewhere else. And a lot of people used to not do that. If you have to go to Stack Overflow to ask a question and dig through something from 2008, it's tough to kind of find your solutions.
And I would like expand on that concept. I know a lot of developers who've been writing code for 20 to 30 years. Not a single one of them knows what they're doing on a new project for a new thing, a new whatever. Like everyone is just figuring it out. And like, yeah, you like lean on, you know, I always lean on the hundreds of things I built before or whatever, but it's a new thing. I don't know. I go to one of my coders, or I go to Drew, or I go ask, how do I do this, or what's the best way to do this, or let's just talk it out. A lot of times it's just, I need to have that conversation so that I can figure out what is the right logical set of steps to do in this case. And there's a lot of that in the Discord too, where it's like, you'll see someone ask a question. Actually, I think this happened with you like a week ago, where you asked a question and there were like 3 different versions of an answer that were all would solve it, but totally different ways to approach it. So I think that's something as a newcomer, if you're coming into just development, coming into Web3 development, just understand that like you're not the only one asking questions, and that will continue to be that way through the entire career path. You continue to ask questions about the new thing you're trying to do. So.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank both of you for coming up from Austin. I got to see Mark and Drew at Consensus, and hopefully get to see you guys again at this next Consensus next year as well. We use Bildr in our classes for our development for things. If anybody is interested, I have tutorials. They have tutorials as well. We have access to this stuff. I'm happy to talk about it further. I'll probably be doing a workshop here in Northwest Arkansas for what I've done kind of using Bildr in the space, and so we'll announce that probably through OSDAO and some other initiatives. So if you need anything, reach out to me or Mark or Drew, and kind of find them on Twitter, probably is the easiest, or on Discord. But again, thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.